this is the patient to parent panel for Intermountain Healing Hearts, and I'm Allie Clegg, and I'm the adult liaison on the governing board. And then Mava is the adult congenital nurse coordinator, and she helped us put this together today. She's our connection with the hospital and the adults. And then anyway, just thanks for coming, and you should give yourselves a pat on the back for coming, because you're already doing a good job as a parent to inform yourselves how to help your kids. So anyway, we'll start, and then Mava's going to moderate for us here.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I want to do just a couple of disclaimers. So when you listen to the panel and you say, okay, my child has that same diagnosis, do not assume that that's going to be the same scenario that your child will have. There's just a huge difference. Every single congenital heart disease is extremely individual, okay? So we can only look at it in terms of general concepts, okay? That's really important to understand that. The other thing is that sometimes when we are asking, I refer to them patients, and I apologize, I should always refer to them as people with congenital heart disease. When they're talking about their experience as a child, sometimes even surprising to them, emotions will flare up and come to the surface, things they haven't thought about. And they may need a minute to collect their emotions and go on. So that is a common thing, and I'm just saying that to the audience and also to the members of the panel. Don't be surprised, that's a common thing that happens, and it's just because we've dealt with a lot of trauma in our lives, and when we are confronted with it, sometimes it surprises us, but how strong those emotions are. What we have, first of all, is we have some questions that were posed by you all on the website, and we'll start with those. And I'm going to give those to all of the, well, two of them I'm going to give to all of the panel to answer. We had some that were written by me, because I know some questions that come up with people that have to deal with congenital heart disease in families, and we'll let them all ask. And in the last half, we're going to open up to questions. At that point, you can address it to anybody, and that's why the names are above, that you want to. And so we'll try to leave plenty of time for that. Okay? What we're going to start out with is we're going to have them each introduce themselves to you, tell just a little bit about what their diagnosis is, you know, what surgeries they've had, maybe a little bit about their family background, you know, where they grew up, how many in the family, you know, did they come from a divorce home, just a little bit so you kind of can relate to them just a little bit, maybe what social stressors that they confront. Okay? So we'll go ahead and start with you, Julia. Okay?
When you stand up.
Well, yeah, if you want to, that would be great, just for this one time, and then you can sit down.
Okay, so my name is Julia, and what part of the diagnosis?
Yes.
Okay, so I have heart defects, a lot of them. I have 2 holes in my heart, and one of my valves opens like almost backwards, and my arteries were in the wrong place, so I had to have the artery out of my arm rerouted so my lungs get oxygen and just a whole bunch of stuff. And then my family, I grew up in Layton, and my dad worked at Hill Air Force Base doing computer analyzing. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she had a preschool, so I got taught in the home until kindergarten. And I have a younger sister who's 3 years younger than me, and she has diabetes. And then my parents divorced when I was 15, so my dad retired early to raise the kids.
My name's Randy. I have tricuspid atresia, so single ventricle. Had the Blaylock shunt, Fontan when I was 4, and then had to have an emergency surgery about 2 weeks later, drain fluid from around the heart. And then I had the revised Fontan in March of '99. I grew up in Clinton. There was my mom and my dad. My dad was a school teacher. My mom, she worked part-time, and then the rest of the time she was home taking care of us. I have, trying to think, 5 siblings. Hard to keep track of. Four brothers, a sister, 2 older brothers. My sister's 2 years older than me, and 2 younger brothers. Pretty good family environment. My older siblings they're kind of my protectors at times. Sometimes they were my tormentors as well.
What do you do
Alright.
now? Tell us what your profession is.
I work for Big Brothers Big Sisters right now. I'm actually a donation. I drive and collect donations for them. So that's what I do now. It's fairly physically challenging at times, but I actually hold up really well.
I'm Nick Brady. I grew up in Ogden. I was born with total pulmonary venous return, which is basically where the pulmonary artery that leaves the heart returns back to the heart, so the blood wasn't mixing with oxygen. So at 4 months old, there was corrective surgery to remedy that. One of the effects of that surgery required that I have a pacemaker for the rest of my life. So I have a pacemaker. It's right here. It's been here. It's been replaced a dozen times or so just because of the generator life of the battery itself, the pacemaker. But that's really the only surgeries. The initial surgery that I had when I was 4 months old was an open heart surgery, and then the others have just been generator replacements for the pacemaker. It was pretty much, those were my symptoms. I had some limitations as far as what I could do growing up. I played soccer or contact sports. But other than that, I seem to be pretty involved, and active as a kid and even now. So that's really, kept me healthy and things like that. And so the generator's really been, the pacemakers with the replacement of that has really been the thing that's kind of been consistent as far as health issues. When I was 17, I had, my heart was retaining water and literally kind of bloated up, really. I had water stored all over my legs, and that was really a symptom. So I came into the hospital, and the function of the heart deteriorated to where it was, instead of a rapid heartbeat where it's going like this, it was more like that. So it was it was really causing some bad effects for my body when I was 17. I was in high school. Got on some medications, shed the water, and since then I've been on some medication to help preserve and maintain the function of the heart, to its best capacity that it can. I grew up. I have 3 sisters, 2 older, 1 younger. My parents are here actually, and I have a wife and a little boy who just turned 1 on Monday. So I studied here at the University of Utah, got a bachelor's degree in architectural, Bachelor of Science in Architectural Studies, master's degree in architecture, and that's what I do now. So I love it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
I'm Tiff. I was born with a bicuspid aortic valve, critical aortic stenosis, and PDA and dilated aorta. I was born premature, so it wasn't. I wasn't pre-diagnosed back then. So when I was about 4 hours old, my doctors heard a murmur, called the cardiologist, came over, I was life-flighted to the old primaries on the hill, and then they figured out the bicuspid and the critical AS and had my first surgery at 2 weeks old to try and correct, or to fix the valve, just basically cut into the valve. It was called a commissurotomy back then. Now I think they just do the balloon, which is through the catheter, but back then it was an open heart, and that worked until I was about 2 years old. And then I went into heart failure and had to have my valve replaced emergently. So they did what was called a Kono procedure, and that's where they replaced my aortic valve with an artificial valve. And they put basically a graft in there to make room for, make the aorta bigger to fit the valve. And then lost my train of thought. But that worked until I was about 14. Oh, they also had accidentally nicked my pulmonary valve at that time. So when I was 14, I started going into heart failure again, and they replaced my aortic valve with a bigger size and replaced my pulmonary valve with a homograft. So it's a cadaver valve in my pulmonary valve, and then I've been good pretty much with my valves since then. I'm monitored for that. And I've always had arrhythmias because of the scar tissue for my heart. So I had a run a VTAC on an exercise test in 2008 when I was 21 and had a cardiac defibrillator put in for that as a precaution. So I've had the 3 open heart surgeries and the cardiac defibrillator and a handful of heart caths. I grew up with my mom, my dad, and an older sister, and my parents didn't divorce till I went into college, so I had them as, growing up. And I graduated from the U with my bachelor's in human development and family studies, and I'm still currently working at Primary Children's, actually, in the cardiology department as a medical assistant, and able to kind of reach out and help within the CHD community that way. So, and in 2012, I married my amazing husband, who's chilling in the back right there. So, and yeah, we're just living life. And oh yes, and Camp Hawkins is able to help start a heart camp for kids with congenital heart disease and their siblings, which is Camp Hawkins. It's every summer in Tooele, so it's at a medical camp. And I was the camp coordinator for the first 4 years, and have stepped down this year to focus on other things in our lives, but still plan on being a big part of it and plan on going back to it. So if any of your kids are camp age, 4 to 17, you should check out Camp Hawkins.
Okay, I'm Allie Clegg, and I was born with coarctic Guillain-Barré aorta, which I had repaired when I was about a month old. And then I have a bicuspid valve and a VSD. And I've only had the one surgery when I was a baby. And then I grew up with 2 parents and then 3 older brothers. So I was the youngest, and they teased me a lot. Currently in my life, I'm married. I have 2 kids, and in 2007 I got my bachelor's in American Sign Language and Deaf Studies here at U. And that's about it.
My name is Matt. I grew up not far from here, about 10-15 minutes away. Youngest of 5 kids. Really didn't take a lot of heat because I have heart problems. But I graduated from the U a number of years ago. I'm currently back in school at Westminster. As far as my heart circumstances, the official diagnosis, I believe, is subaortic stenosis. I've had open heart surgery 5 times. My aortic valve's been replaced twice. I've had a handful of heart caths. What if I missed anything? Oh, yes. I work in the wireless industry in account management.
I'm Ashley. I'm a tetralogy of 4 patients. My first surgery was at 2 years old, open heart. They actually didn't know that I had any problems until I was about 18 months old. Just a routine family practitioner check, and they thought something sounded strange. Don't mind the fact I was born blue, but 30 plus years ago, I guess that's kind of common. So they went in and patched the holes when I was 2, and then they waited till I was a little bit bigger, till I was 9, to replace my pulmonary valve. I was a stubborn child, I guess you could say, so when the parents said, do things until you get tired and stop, I just pushed harder because I didn't want to feel like I was different. And luckily I didn't have any problems doing that, but then they had to replace my pulmonary valve yet again. Basically, when you replace a valve in your system, the tissue isn't yours and your body doesn't like it, so it just breaks down the valve much faster. And so every 15, 20 years, they have to replace another one. The last one was when I was 27. I don't really have any issues other than the typical, sometimes I can't tell if I'm just really out of shape or if there's something else, kind of permitting me or prohibiting me from working out the way I want to. But I ran a marathon, which I did it for myself because, again, I'm stubborn. So I wanted to see if I could do it, I did. and I'm the youngest of 4 kids. I was tormented, but I think it was in a loving way. But I work here at the U in cardiovascular, graduated from the U, so.
I'm Mimi McDonald. The 5th of 6 girls. I'm the only one that got the lovely heart gene. That's kind of a dominant, ugly gene in our family. My dad also has, I have aortic stenosis that I got from him, and he had 2 siblings pass away from heart problems. And anyway, I was the lucky one, number 5. I had my first, let's see, I was just monitored from birth till the valve was kind of giving up, and then they tried to correct it twice and it didn't really help. And then my freshman year of college, I had the Ross. They took my aortic valve out to put my pulmonary in the aortic position and put a donor one in the pulmonary, and that's what I currently have. So it's kind of, some cardiologists like it and some don't, because an adult cardiologist here said, well, now you have 2 heart problems, so he wasn't a fan of it, but they fixed it so I could have kids, which is kind of, you know, all I want to do in my life is be a mom, and I have 4 kids, which was, you know, they kind of told me they didn't know if I was going to have kids, so I got 4, so I'm counting myself one of the lucky ones. And yeah, I never, like, my heart defect didn't slow me down. I did sports and then I switched to dancing. And it wasn't until I was on a dance team at Riggs, yes, I'm that old, that my cardiologist said, okay, you're done, no more. And so that was kind of the last time I exercised. Which is bad. I know I'm supposed to, but I don't know. I think I'm scared. Who knows? Who knows what's wrong with me? But, I just loved, like, I felt special having a heart problem. Like, my mom would come every year. We'd go to my appointments, and then she'd take me shopping, and we'd eat, and it was bonding time, and I never felt like it was a burden. I never felt like I was, had it hard or was, woe was me. I never felt like that about my heart problems. Until my little daughter was diagnosed with critical aortic stenosis, and then it's a game changer. Like for me, growing up with it, I kind of was proud of my little heart defect. I liked it. And then when my daughter got it, it just was devastating. And so I always tell the heart moms, I'm like, it's so much easier to be the patient, like the anxiety and the awful, like, sleepless nights wondering what's happening in your child. That's, for me, that's the hard thing. And my little Mia, actually, she's in heaven now. She was 4, and we were on her Make-A-Wish trip, and we won't go into that today because this is about the adults, but that, as far as psychological stressors, has been my only one in the heart world, is having my daughter not with me.
If I can follow you. Yeah. My name's Michelle. Amy and I are good friends. Okay, I followed everybody back here. I don't know what I was supposed to say. Oh, my diagnosis is Wolff Parkinson White syndrome. It was my first diagnosis. So they didn't find it until I was 11 years old, when I went into cardiac arrest in the middle of school. Back then there wasn't a teacher who knew CPR, so I just laid there until the paramedics came. So then I grew up in Oakland Valley. So I was flown to the U. My siblings didn't have a cardiology department at that time. I was flown to the U and underwent my first open heart surgery, first and only. And there, Wolff Parkinson White syndrome is kind of like stoplights. So it signals your blood which way to go. Everybody has these signals in your heart. Well, I had too many, so my blood got confused which way to go, and it just led to cardiac arrest. So I underwent open heart surgery, and they would zap or get rid of these electrical pathways that I had. From then on, they would just do this in the cath lab. So cath lab has been my home for many, many years. I visit it on a regular basis. And then I graduated from college, I got married, I had twins. They're spontaneous twins, nothing to make twins. Kind of freaked my cardiologist out a little bit, but we made it through there. My body did really well handling twins. I didn't do so well a couple months after they were born. It was kind of like a letdown after running a marathon. Maybe I don't know. It was my heart was tired. It was kind of what my cardiologist explained to me, and so from then they noticed that my heart was getting a little thick. They just thought that maybe that was because I have a pacemaker. Back up a couple years, I got a pacemaker, and they thought maybe that was because I was 100% paced, so it just made my heart a little bit thick. But then my twins were 31 weekers. Talk louder, okay. My twins were 31 weekers, and my little girl, they noticed a heart defect in her. Her very first diagnosis was Wolff Parkinson-White syndrome. Came directly from me. Wasn't supposed to, but it did. And then they also noticed her heart was thick. And then they looked at me again, and looked at her, and looked at me, and looked at her. And we were thick on the exact same area. So we both, on the same day, got diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. She was just a couple weeks old at the time, and I was 30 years old. And so she ended up having a heart transplant because she got the worst end of it, and I still have mine. I ended up having a defibrillator put in, and take medication, and keep going on with life. So that's kind of always it.
Okay, thanks. All right, the first question we're going to pose to the panel is, how do we teach our children to be proud of being a heart hero and not ashamed of it because she is different? So I'm actually going to start with Tiffany. Have you started, and then we'll go this way and then come back to Julia, okay?
So, how do you be proud of being a heart hero?
Right there, that says a lot. So just to be proud, to be a heart hero and not ashamed. Basically, how do you teach your children not to be ashamed of having a heart defect?
Everybody talk really loud.
Basically, the environment I grew up in, my parents just always taught me to speak for myself, to be able to acknowledge that I have it, but it wasn't going to hold me back. There was things I couldn't do, but case in point, I wanted to do gymnastics, but my cardiologist was like, you're on blood thinners, I don't want you to hit your head. And my mom basically said, yes, that could happen, but this is something that's important to you, I want you to be able to live your life. So we took that risk, and I did gymnastics for a few years growing up. But it was just always like, this is things that you do, this is part of you, but it's a part that you can grow from. It doesn't have to define you, and you can spread knowledge from it. I guess I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm trying to figure out the best way to broach it. I might have to think about it for a minute.
Okay. Should we leave it open and maybe somebody wants to jump in?
Yeah, I'd say leave
Okay,
it
go
open
ahead.
because I don't have much to say on it.
Sure. Anybody else have anything?
I guess not. As far as not feeling ashamed, I think as I reflect and look back on it, I don't ever remember, at least at a young age, having reasons to feel ashamed necessarily, or that there was something overly wrong with me. My parents were always very open about it. I always had a really good relationship with my doctor. There were definitely obstacles that were put in the way, and that was a source of a different kind of frustration. But as far as feeling ashamed, this was something that I had and that I dealt with and that I lived with and continue to do so, but it was never that anything was wrong with me. It's that this is your circumstances, this is how you were born, and the way that the cards have fallen, but there's not anything wrong with you. You can still have a great quality of life, you can do the things that you want to do, but there was never any real reason, as it was presented to me, to feel ashamed. It's just, this is how you are, and it's okay. And going kind of what Mimi said just a minute ago of, like, you can be proud of it. It's okay. It's what makes you unique. You can learn things from it. That kind of a perspective is what I recall more than anything.
I think the attitude, as with anything, good or bad, maybe if you're a parent, just phrase it as, yeah, it's not very fun, you know, it was maybe painful or something, it's not that exciting, but look at the experience like that you got to do on your own, that you had to rely on yourself, or that a lot of kids don't ever get to be in that situation. And it sounds kind of strange, but yet in a way it's kind of very empowering. So I think maybe that could be a fear of not doing future, having to go to the hospital in the future or something, because they've kind of been there. I don't know.
I remember after my first heart surgery in 7th grade, back then they put like the big staples in your stomach. And I remember being at school and like my friends would feel, because it would like, it stuck out, the staple. They probably don't do that anymore, but my friends would feel it and were like, you have staples. And it was just like, I don't know, like I never, it was just kind of like, it was who I was, and I never ever felt any shame. All of the guilt and all of the shame and all of the earth-shattering sadness has come from the adult side, from the mommy side of it. I think also, like, with my daughter, it was just kind of our family life. Like, she had a special heart, you know, we talked about her donor all the time, and it was just, it was normal. It wasn't like, there was nothing to be ashamed of, because it wasn't anyone's fault. Like, it was just this gene that's been passed down through these generations, and it's not our fault, you know. Like, in life, there's choices you make that cause health problems. This isn't one of them. Like, this was the card you were dealt, and sadly, you know, like, it wasn't sad until it became sad. Living with it, I have no shame in myself, except for that I passed it on to my daughter.
I think growing up, it was a fact of life. You know, it was just like brown hair, or brown hair, blue eyes, or whatever. It's just a fact of life, and it wasn't really. Yes, we had open communication with my parents and with my doctors, but there wasn't really anything to talk about. What would you talk about? You know, it was just kind of what we dealt with. It didn't really interfere. I felt like it didn't interfere with my life. And preparing to come here today, I talked to my parents a little bit, and they said yes, it did affect you a lot. But I didn't feel like it had interfered with my life too much. But again, it was normal. This is what you do.
Julia, we need that.
Well, I was raised Mormon, so, you know, and my mom would always say, God only gives challenges to the ones he loves most and knows that they can handle it. So I was a strong spirit, is what, I guess that's a heart hero, but if you're religious, you can tell your kids, you know, you got this because God knows you're special and you can handle it. On the non-religious side, I actually kind of bragged a little. When I was 12-ish, I had a really, really bad tachycardia, and I had to be flown in the White Flight helicopter, and I got the defibrillator zap thing on a Christmas day. So I went back to school. I got to fly in a helicopter on Christmas.
Yeah, it's just, like everyone's kind of said, it's just, this is our lives. So, to me, you know, I don't know anything else. This was just who I was. This is the situation I've had to deal with. And, yeah, I've never been ashamed of it. And I think a lot of that is because of my family and my siblings. Because, you know, my brothers, my sisters, they never, like, left me out of anything. And so I would just play with them, run around with them, and yeah, I'd get, like, sick or tired, but it was worth having fun. And I mean, we're all born who we are, so there's nothing really to be ashamed about. That's just, I think what means most is just how we all as individuals deal with our situation and how we get through it. And yeah, don't don't let it control you. Don't let it define you. Still define your own life, and so yeah, and there's nothing to be ashamed about.
Yeah, similar for me. It was just normal life for me. The only thing I really was self-conscious about, I didn't ever feel ashamed about it, but it's just more conscious of it is when I take off my shirt to go swimming or something. I have a scar through here, one here, now I have one here. Got one on the side. So those were my battle scars, and that's what my family would tell me. My parents would tell me those are your battle scars. I had a fight with a tiger. That when I was a kid, I felt those were empowering for me, and it was kind of a way to diffuse some of the self-consciousness that I had about taking off my shirt and go swimming, because I love doing that, and at the same time, though being maybe self-conscious about that, it never really stopped me from doing that, because it was so much fun, and no one ever told me you can't do that or you shouldn't do that, or like no one ever felt, at least so far as I could tell, like I was different. Friends, when I took off my shirt, had that pacemaker that was a little thicker than they are now. Looked like I was packing some smokes or something. Right up here on my chest when I was 8. I never felt like other people that were close to me were ashamed because they were with me, which I think made me feel like I was worth something, and maybe elevated in their eyes because of things I had gone through, which is, my dad's told me many times, I think some of the things that I went through as a young kid made me tough-skinned and stronger, and I agree, I'm a little stubborn, and I like to have things my way, and usually, and I think that a lot of that is due to the fact that I had to fight for my life when I was a baby, and I've done it since, and that makes me feel not pride in a proud and prideful way, but a sense of accomplishment that I've overcome some of the things that have been misfortune in some ways, but I don't dwell on them at all, nor did my family.
Okay, I'm just going to inject one more comment here, and that is some studies have been done on emotional stability of adults, and they found that it wasn't necessarily the diagnosis, how severe the diagnosis was, but it had more to do with the anxiety of the parents. So parents really need to be able to manage their anxiety. Okay.
That was going to be my question. Did you feel your parents, it's natural for parents to protect their young. Did you feel like they were overprotective? Did they hold you back?
I was talking about this with my parents on the way down now. My dad was he was protective, he was very protective, especially if I was wrestling or doing roughhousing with friends or family or whoever. My mom was a little less so, but definitely concerned, but she wasn't nearly as overprotective. But I think there is a balance to maintain, so that the kids, as a kid, I never really noticed either one of them being too protective or underprotective. I think it was just a good thing. Had I been told, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, I think that would have probably limited, I would have always been dwelling on that. And I think that by balancing the two, saying maybe you should try something else, give them avenues that they can, instead of playing football as a kid, I was given options to play baseball or go swimming or play golf or all sorts of things. So give them avenues which they can explore things that they might not be able to do, but in a way that they don't see it as something that's a burden to their lifestyle.
I really agree with you with that because my parents were kind of the same way. Both of my parents were nurses, and but my mom kind of had that. I'm the mother I have to protect on top of, I have all this medical knowledge, but I don't know if she can do this, I don't know if she can do that. And so my mom always had a really high level of anxiety around my heart issues. I remember when I was about 12 to 14, when my heart was really starting to fail again before my surgery when I was 14, I was having a lot of palpitations, extra heartbeats. I was having ventricular tachycardia. I also have asthma, and so if my lungs would act up, the medicine I was on at the time, albuterol, stimulates your heart, so it would cause extra heartbeats. And there was a while there where I'd have to go to the hospital every time I'd need a treatment because they'd have to monitor my heart. And I remember one instance where where we were heading to the hospital because I was having lots of palpitations, and it was one of those, I was 12 and old enough to worry about, my mortality, and I didn't know if, I asked her, I was like, am I gonna die? And that put her in a really awkward position because, I didn't, but she didn't want to lie to me, she wanted to be honest, and I kind of wished that she was just like, kind of said, no, like, you're fine, but it's just her anxiety got the best of her in that instance. And I remember that was a really scary moment for me because I honestly didn't know. And so, but I kind of told her also around that same time, I'm like, you need to be honest with me because beforehand, probably a year before that, I had been scheduled for a heart cath, and my entire family knew, but didn't tell me because they didn't want to worry me. And so I didn't learn until 2 days before I had a heart cath that I was going in and have to stay in the hospital. And I got really mad at them and told them, you need to keep me in the room, I need to know what's going on. And so it is a balancing act. You don't want to put all of your anxieties on your children, but you need to be honest with them in most instances where, to the best of their coping abilities so that they can figure out or, I guess, deal with what they're going through also. But my dad, on the other end of it, he came from the medical background, but was very, no, she'll be okay, like, this is what's going on, and we'll be fine, and just have to have this medicine adjusted or have this procedure. So it's just trying to find that balance of you don't want to put too much of your anxieties on your kids, but still be honest with them and have that open communication.
Does anybody have anything else to add on the balance between parent support and being protected?
Oh, see, my mom was the helicopter parent, She thought the porcelain doll will break if I do anything. My dad was like, oh, go climb a tree. If you fall, it'll be learn your lesson. Don't climb so high. But every single school year, every year, my mom brought nurses and counselors from primary children's to teach my class, this girl has problems with her heart, you've got to be careful when you play with her. And so nobody would play with me because they thought I was going to break. And one person, it's actually a kid that said, are you going to die? And so I've always been scientific, I'm a nerd. And even at that young age, I was like, well, everybody dies. But, they meant like right now. So, but yeah, my mom, the principal was in the class, you gotta be careful with this little girl. And that was annoying because then no one will play with me. And on the other hand, my dad was like, yeah, something might happen, but go live your life until it does. So.
On to another question here. My child is getting old enough to start asking questions about his heart condition and what it means for his mortality. Okay, we've kind of touched on this. I try to be realistic with him, but positive. I can imagine what this worry must be like for a child. I am wondering how doctors and other parents have dealt with this issue. So when children reach that cognitive point in their lives where they know that they're different and they have a condition that could possibly be shorten their life. Open it up. Go ahead.
I think, I just remember when I saw my cardiologist, my mom was always high anxiety going year after year. And I don't know if that made me anxious or if I was just more anxious about the heart thing, but I remember my cardiologist always telling me, like, well, don't worry about your heart or it'll just make your heart worse. So then I was worrying that I was worrying about my heart all the time. And I still have anxiety. But interestingly too, I think it helps to, I don't know that, it's a balancing act, but I wish my parents had been more open with me. They were very private about health issues, and that may be generational, People are a lot more open about their health circumstances these days. So I think they were really quiet about it. They told me not to tell anyone about it, so I never did. And so interestingly, their anxiety was really high when I was a baby, and then it decreased as they saw me grow up with it. And then I did drill team and dance and really vigorous physical stuff, so their anxiety lessened. But then I got to the point where I was old enough to know stuff about mortality and really probably not until I was an adult that I really fully know my diagnosis and the risks and everything. And so then my anxiety went through the roof. So I really struggled with that. But I guess for the second part of that question about what can doctors and people do, I really feel like it would be beneficial for the doctors to, instead of me being in the room and having my mom anxiously being there, I kind of wish like maybe when I'd go to my appointments, I would meet with a social worker and like fill out some sort of psychological evaluation, like how are you doing? Are you worried about your heart? And have more of a, I don't know, a working relationship with a social worker, just to see like where the kids are at. Like, are they worried about dying? Are they worried about, what it is? And then have the social worker really help you as parents and in your home to figure out how to manage that a little better, so that when the child does reach the age of worry, that can be resolved.
Anybody have anything else to add about telling a child about their heart?
Yeah, I don't know exactly when it clicked, so to speak, that there was something specifically wrong with my heart and that it did present mortal challenges of some kind, because it absolutely is a reality. But I think that's the point, at least it was for me, that it is a reality, but dwelling on it day in and day out, it's not going to make a difference. And that there are those times when it comes and you get nervous and the anxiety rises, but then before you know it, you're swimming with your friends and you're not thinking about the anxiety, you're not thinking about your heart, you're just enjoying life. And so there wasn't a whole lot of reason to dwell on the mortal fact. The other thought that I had is, and I've had, like anybody else on this panel, have had a number of what you would term close calls, and still here and doing well. I'm thoroughly convinced that my mortal existence will not be determined by my heart. Maybe I have too much confidence in medical technology and the experiences that I've had, but like I said, having open heart surgery 5 times thus far and everything else along the way, it's going to come, it's going to go, but I'm going to keep living my life. And so from a parent perspective, I've always maintained that it's felt much harder for my parents to deal with this than it has been for me. And so I think it's kind of, it's reality, but you move on and you live on.
Like my dad said, she'll die of cancer.
The parent, my mom's always kind of been the voice of calm for me. And when I was younger, my first heart surgery, I went to the cardiologist and I loaded up on sugar-free suckers, that was why I was there. That and the stickers and I don't know, it seemed like all fun and games. And then, my mom was the one doing all the technical talk and I was just there to, whatever. And then my last surgery was after I had turned 18. And so after you're 18, you have to get consent. And they bring in this long list of all these things you can die from. Long old list. And you read through all of them and you're like, this is it. I'm not going to make it through this. Because look at all the ways you can die. And I'm like, Mom, they want me to sign this. And I'm like, I wanted to get married. It was really, I was terrified when all of a sudden it shifted to I have to sign this. This is on me. And my mom, she was the voice of calm, and she was like, oh, had she have displayed what I was feeling on the inside, I probably would have been like, we'll just take our chances, we're not going to do this whole switcheroo thing in my heart. Because it's scary to think about, what they're actually going to do when you have that awareness. And I think not having my mom there as, the voice of calm saying, you're gonna make it through, you're gonna be okay, even though she didn't know, you know, like, I don't know, I just liked that despite being really scared and thinking, you know, why, this isn't right, you know, I'm a kid at heart and I have to sign this paper, like, that I'm okay if one of these things, like, that was awful, I remember that, and, just grateful that I had her to kind of be there with me, and it doesn't go away, like, I have my appointment on Monday, and my mom still comes with me, and I'm in my 30s, and it's like our thing, and I just, like, my heart problems are very connected to my mom. I don't, you know, I have not cut the cord in that regard. I just need her, and yeah, she's just, I can't have a heart problem without my mom, I guess, so.
All right, I want to open it up to questions. Oh, okay, we'll have Randy speak, and then I'll open it up to questions from the audience.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know how everyone else felt when they were a child, and I don't know if really I talked with my parents much about the mortality issue, but when I was a child, I just kind of always had a very strong sense of my own mortality, and I think it's just because the trauma you go through, the surgeries, the sickness, you know that you're not quite right. And then, yeah, my last surgery, I was almost 18, so, you know, going into that surgery, I knew how real the possibility was that I would go into that surgical room and there was a chance I wasn't going to be coming out alive. But as I've gotten older, and I've kind of learned it the hard way, because I've had some people very close to me in my life pass away in accidents. So that's kind of made me realize that really everybody's life is fragile, and any of us can be taken at any moment. So now I don't really focus so much about the mortality of my life when it comes to my heart, because you just don't know what's going to happen day to day. So that's where I am now. I just try to take everything day by day.
Okay, is there any questions that the audience would like to ask?
Tiff talked about this a little bit earlier. When you got to an age when you were kind of
This is a support group, so I think we all know that the hard things that come up, so take your time.
when you get to that age, my son has a heart cath coming up, and compared to the 3 open heart surgeries he had, I mean, it's, you know, they're like, it's just a procedure, it's not a big deal, and he's concerned about it. But, and you said you wanted to know. I mean, do you guys all feel that way? I mean, do you remember being 11 years old? I mean, how much should we be telling him, and how much should we just kind of, I mean, because I think we've kind of been taking the point that he knows that it's coming up, he doesn't know exactly when, and we're not really talking about it too much. I mean, we talked about it when the doctor told him that it was, and so he's aware of it and what it is for the most part.
He has a lot of anxiety about
But
it.
he has anxiety about it, and I just wonder how much we should have that in the foreground and how much of it we should have in the background.
One thing that really,
Speak up.
sorry, when when I was 14 and I had my last open heart surgery, I remember growing up, my parents always said how they weren't sure, and just telling me about my life story, how risky it was with my first surgery to, there was such a small chance that I would survive, and all of the percentages. And so when I was 14 and was told I needed open heart surgery, no one ever told me that my chances were now 90% of surviving instead of 10% of surviving. So at 14, I was convinced that, I was probably going to die, and my parents, weren't sure how much to talk about it, and so I didn't want to worry them, and so it never came up until after the procedure about how scared I was, and I had kind of just come to terms on my own of saying, well, if I have a purpose in life, God's not going to take me, I'm going to live, and that's just kind of something I came to within myself. But talking to them after the fact, because after the surgery they kind of were like, why did your grades slip so much before the surgery? And I was like, I didn't see the point of school, and we realized that they didn't know that I didn't know the percentage had changed so much that, this procedure was so much less riskier, or this surgery was so much less riskier than the first one. And so my advice would just be to talk to them and kind of explain, yes, you've gone through all of these open heart procedures, and we're validating that it is very scary because you still have to go under anesthesia, but this procedure is so much less riskier than the open hearts. You've been through the hard part already, and just trying to be as honest with him about the facts that won't scare him. Just kind of trying to explain in comparison to what he's been through that this is very small, because he could be very worried that this is going to be as big of a deal as his other open heart surgeries.
I'm not a parent, so I'm kind of negated from this, but I did have ulcers when I was in 2nd grade, so I'm worried. I still have anxiety. But I think if I'm just thinking of myself, if my parents were to kind of be quiet about it and then spring it on me, I think that would, in a sense, just really overwhelm me. And I know it's going to be a fine balance. I think just knowing your child, knowing how anxious they are just about life in general, knowing how they deal with problems at school, and then kind of taking that into regard of just maybe a few days before. Not a week or not a couple weeks, so they just worry, but maybe just a few days before, ask them, hey buddy, this is what we're going to do. What do you think about this? What do you worry about? Is there anything you worry about? Is there anything kind of cool that you want to know about, or just maybe that way to just kind of ease that? But hey, they can show you some really cool stuff when you're done, like some cool pictures or something, and then you can feel great knowing afterwards that it's over and it's okay and you're okay, and trying to pull the positive, I think, as much as possible for a kid. But
I will forever maintain that any sort of emotional stress or anxiety is always worse than any procedures involved. And so I remember when I had surgery, one of them was around 8 or 9, and I had to fly to a different surgeon across the country. My parents told me about, and I think I was the youngest, I'm pretty sure my whole family knew about it, probably about a week-ish before. And I think it's a really fine line. Obviously, you're going to get a lot of different perspectives. But why worry about it if you don't have to worry about it? I think there comes a maturity when you are able to stand and kind of deal with those pressures, because I had some procedures later on that I knew were coming down the pipeline. It was okay, but at a young enough age, to me it was, and I think my parents' perspective was, let him enjoy life, let him enjoy school and his friends and do the things that he wants to do. And then when we get close enough that it's not like tomorrow, but maybe in 5 days, maybe in a week or something like that, this is what's going to be going on. And then as far as, I remember being very nervous about heart caths because I was never put under for any of mine. And just emphasizing, like, this is a walk in the park compared to surgery. This is nothing, that kind of a thing. And then, man, whatever they give you before it works. It's great. I remember very clearly, and it's a story that's talked about in my family, drinking something and just hitting the coffee table because it was so great. So I mean, after that part, it's all downhill from there. But that's for me, is that the anticipation was always the hardest part, and so I think my parents tried to time it as close as possible without being disrespectful, but just saying, let him enjoy 4 or 5 more days when he doesn't have to worry about this and struggle to fall asleep at night and things like that.
I have a quick question. In most CAS procedures or other types of surgical procedures, do they, for children, can they use, is it Versed or is it, what is the medication that kind of makes you forget? What is? And so do they use that quite a bit now? So I don't know how many years they've been using it. I remember a lot of stuff, so I don't think that it's, you know, I think.
Watch mine.
You what?
I always watch the procedure because, like I said, I'm scientific. I like being a part of the stuff. So I would always
If
watch.
you're a
the-
high control person, you do better if you're watching.
I always watched the screen when they were doing it. It was fascinating to me.
I guess my point is just sure that the anxiety buildup, that just kind of have some peace of mind that regardless of what's going on during the procedure, they're most likely not going to remember.
And I just want to interject right here, find out what your son is anxious about. Is he anxious that they'll find something wrong with his heart? Or is he anxious about the needle, or what it is?
He's anxious about dying.
About dying. Okay, so he thinks that he will die during the heart catheterization procedure. Okay. Has he had a chance to talk to his cardiologist? And he still has anxiety about it?
It's getting better. We talked about it a lot, but he, you know, I don't know. It's new to us this year. He's just gotten to the point where he is starting to realize that, you know, he has this condition and that there's things that happen. You know, he says to me, "Well, people die all the time in surgery. So how do you know they're not going to die?"
Does he know any other children? Has he been able to interact with any other children that have control disease?
Not very many, no. I
So
have a
you might
cousin-
want to talk to Tiffany afterwards. She might be able to.
I have a cousin who had a baby, has similar things, and he passed away. So.
Mem had a comment she wanted to add.
That's why I was gonna ask.
Mem, I didn't mean Mem.
It's fine. No big. No. How old is your son?
He's 11.
11. For me, I'm gonna put my mom head on for a minute. When we, my little girl waited for a heart in Seattle for months, and I just thought this is never gonna happen. Like this, like I am going to, the world is gonna end. Like I just never could see, like getting past this. And so the, you know, the staff there is wonderful. Anyway, they brought in one of the families, one of the little girls that had a transplant, and like the second I laid eyes on this little Zoe, I was like, there's hope for my future. Like I can do, you know, we're gonna make it through. And I think for me, you know, I guess as the patient, just seeing, you know, this little girl like running around and being darling that had a transplant, and that was like what we were hoping for. I think it'll help him to hang out with, or to get, you know, and there's plenty in IHH. There's plenty of, I don't know how many teens we have, but
We can look it up.
just seeing, like, just having lunch with someone and then saying, you know, because like when I was his age and had surgery, like I remember things like they put the magic cream on my hand, and yeah, I was scared, but then when I woke up, you know, there's things that are scary, but then you make it through. And I think just having him interact with someone that's like on the other side of it will help immensely, because it did for me, seeing that little girl. Like I still remember my heart like there's like, I'm gonna be okay, you know, which now I'm not okay, but I was okay for a while. So yeah, maybe connecting with, you know, and we can help you find, through IHH, we can help you find some of those kids and just go have a meal and he can ask questions. And because there's like, I don't know if you guys, after your surgeries, like when you're intubated and you're awake, it's like the worst, like most terrifying thing ever. Like you're like breathing through a straw, literally, and it's awful. And I was like signing to my family. I was like finger spelling because I was like, get this out. And there's things that are super terrifying. And you know, maybe if he knows, like when you wake up, it might be hard to breathe, and work out some, I don't know, whatever might help him prepare for that. But I wasn't ready for that. When I woke up and I was panicking because I couldn't breathe. I was aware that I couldn't breathe, and it was absolutely terrifying. Like I still think about it and think how long my daughter was intubated and how did she feel that the whole time? You know, because as soon as I told them through my awesome finger spelling that they needed to get it out, like then the relief came, you know. But I think connecting with another kiddo, having him see him, like post everything, and I think that'll be good, because that's what helped me in the end. I was like, kids have hurt like, what's going on? You know, it was scary.
Do we have any other questions from the audience that they want to pose? Go ahead.
It sounds like all of you are really, adjusted to the idea of living with heart problems and things. And I mean, you're on this panel, I'm sure, so like, that's obvious. But did you ever, some of you, it sounds like you didn't as much, but did any of you ever go through an angry time where you're just like, why me? And what did you do to help us?
Shake your head if that is true.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I wasn't angry about the heart issues. In fact, I didn't even care if I, couldn't play sports or whatever. I mean, in church I did play sports, but not at school. Anyway, what angered me most was that my mom was like, oh, you can't. Or she would, announce at school, hey, you gotta be careful with this student because something will happen to her. It wasn't the heart issue itself, it was that my mom made it an issue. And she just, like my dad, if you get tired when you're playing, then stop, It's more not the issue itself, it's what people make of it, I think. That's what angered me is my mom would always, oh, you can't. When I was 15, my mom admitted, after my parents got divorced, she told me a few years later, if I had gotten custody of you, you would not be driving, you would not be going out, because I work at a cat rescue. Because I don't have a job, but I volunteer. And she said, you wouldn't be driving, you wouldn't be volunteering. I would basically be home doing cross-stitch the whole time. Because she made it more than it was. And my dad, I'll go out and I go camping and fishing and hiking means leisurely stroll. Yeah, he lets me go out and do whatever. If I get tired, I sit down and rest. So it's more how you treat it rather than what it is. Does that make sense?
Other comments?
Yeah, there's probably going to be anger issues that always kind of come up at certain times. Like she was saying, if people would tell you you can't, that would upset me. It kind of make me feel small, and not only that, like when you're really young and people tell you you can't, you didn't quite understand, why are they telling me I can't do this or that or things like that. And then probably when I was going through high school, right before my surgery, there was a lot of frustration at that point as well, because I think high schools can be tough anyways, but I was trying to balance school and I didn't feel good, and I had the anxiety about surgery coming up, and so I think me personally, I've vented my stresses and my anxieties through anger a lot. There was probably a lot of yelling at my parents. I'm sure my mom probably remembers. A lot of fighting at times. So yeah, there will probably, everyone's different, but there might be some anger issues that you'll have to deal with.
My issue was more that I didn't have control over certain situations. When I was really young, about 6 to 8 years old, I had a lot of anger issues, and I also have pretty severe asthma, and so I was in the hospital a lot for my heart and a lot for my lungs, and it wasn't until I really started working with the child life specialists, and they figured out it's more the control issue. You can decide if you want your medicine now or in 10 minutes. Do you want to take them yourself, or do you want us to help you, things like that. Just trying to give control back to the child in any situation that you can really helped me a lot. And then anytime they have this situation change in their status with, oh, now you need surgery, now you can't do this because your heart's getting too sick, there's going to be anger that's going to go along with that. But you just try and talk through it as much as you can, and it's just kind of one of the grieving stages that any person goes through. Anger, anxiety, stress, all of that's just going to be part of the coping stages.
Michelle?
I think it's important as a parent so your kids know that they can be angry, they can be ticked off. So what are we going to do about it? the why me, I've had several people tell me, well, why not you? All right. It's kind of hard to shift those hats and to shift that mind of thinking, especially to an 11-year-old or to a 7-year-old, or any age. But I think those are the cards you were dealt with. So what are we gonna do about it? And yeah, let's spend a little bit, be ticked off together. I'm ticked too. I think Tiffany nails it a lot with control. Give that control back to your child. What are they gonna do about the cath lab and preparing for it? What will help them to be in control? The cath lab is awesome in the fact that they handle it different than a surgical room. I mean, you can walk your child in there, you can stand in there for as long as you want to until they start tapping their foot. But I just took my daughter to the cath lab 2 days ago, and we stood in there for a long time. So I think it's just kind of, everyone's different, but really giving that control back to them, and then the why not you, and what are we gonna do about it?
Any more comments on that? Any last questions from the audience?
So, we have a daughter, so this is for the girls. How do I help her not be self-conscious about her scar and to feel beautiful?
I've never felt self-conscious ever. Like it just was part of me, and now I have a little scar that makes me look like I have a little bit of chest from far away. So if you can just teach her to twist it in a positive light. It's just my heart problems, I've always felt special and felt like I was, unique, and that was never part of my mentality with my scar. Like same with him, I have like dot-to-dot scars because of chest tubes, and it's all scarred up, but I don't that never was a thing for me. I think a lot of it comes from what you present to her. Like, oh, it's your beautiful, yeah, we called it the Zipper Club. My dad has the same one. And, we were the prestigious ones in our family because we were the Zipper Club. We just, my family was good at making me feel like I was unique, and it wasn't I don't know. The scar's never been as big of a body issue as other things in my life. It just was there, and no one ever sees it, it's not on display very much. Well, it isn't for me as an adult, and that never bothered me. So but I think a lot of it was from my mom not paying a lot of attention to it. Like, oh, it's your zipper, it's your scar. It's what makes you you, and you're fabulous. It comes from that love that you're gonna give her.
That her self-esteem is not wrapped up into whether or not she has a scar now, but the person she is. That can I say?
How old is your daughter?
She's almost 4 months.
Okay. Does her diagnosis predict more open heart surgeries?
Yeah, we're about, I don't know, she'll have one in the next 2 months probably, and then hopefully if we can get her big enough, she'll be able to do it with a cath for the rest of her life.
Okay. I was gonna say, if her open heart surgeries are minimal, then that scar will fade. And because mine was so long ago, that my scar is pretty long. I don't know if they need that much room anymore. And mine's faded. I only had one open heart surgery. I was 11 at the time. But I can't see mine, and I don't have any clothes where it shows.
Yeah, mine's just white. I can show it off if you want. Mine's white. If you're really looking at it, you can't see it. I have a big one. It goes all the way from here all the way down to my belly button.
See, I don't think they need that much room anymore.
Well, I had two. I have they're up to two. There's one from here to here, and then another one just off to the side. And then I've got one on my arm. So, but they're white now. When they're new, they're pink and they're big, and it looks bad.
mom always said that when I was really little, she's like, you know, if this is something that really bothers you when you're older, then we'll help you, you know, we can take you to a plastic surgeon and see if that's something. She's like, but I want you to wait until you're older and decide. And I realized that this is something I've had all but 10 days of my life. I would look really weird without this scar. I look at people like, you know, models that are in bathing suits, and I'm like, something's missing. Like, that doesn't look right. And so, and I've noticed also, like at Camp Hawkins, looking at the other kids, like we'll see boys and girls that are like lifting up their shirt comparing scars. They're like, well, mine goes to here and mine's this wide, and like it really helps them to know. I didn't know anyone growing up that had scars or had this scar, and I see all these kids nowadays with IHH and with Camp Hawkins, and just through more social networking that they're able to relate to other children and say, I'm not the only one out here, but even if I am, I'm cool. I've got this, you know, I've got battle wounds, and even as an adult, I hang out with guys and they're like, I've got this scar, I've got this scar. I'm like, psh, I got you beat. Here to here, I got you beat. So just make it something that she can turn into a positive she's proud of.
Okay, unfortunately we're out of time. I think this has been very enlightening for me. I have learned so much, and I hope that it's something that perhaps we can continue on. We'd like to thank our panel. Would you like to all Before we leave, I want to just them to take 30 seconds and just tell you as parents, as grandparents, what was the one thing that your parent or your family did that helped you cope? And we'll just end that on that note. We have a thank you gift for the speakers, so don't leave until I give that to you today. And thank you so much for coming. You being here, being interested, just puts that much more emphasis on this disease and getting support for it and making it known to the public so there's more understanding of it. So thanks to all of you too. Okay? Start with you, Julia.
I don't know, just loving, even though my mom was protective, she still loved me, and I knew that. And my dad, you know, he loved me, and he let me, my freedom was a testament of his love. So as long as your kid knows you love, no matter what, which way you go, it's gotta be loved.
Yeah, just feeling loved by all the people around you, and just having that support of everyone around you, just help you get through things, and at the same time, people willing to let you kind of try different things, even if you fail, even if you can't do it. When they encourage you and let you try things, I just think it helps build your confidence too.
Yeah, same for me. Love. My parents gave me an amazing amount of love, and they always made me feel proud that they were proud of me. Another thing that they taught me is that, you know, and that I have always been grateful for is just having a faith in a Heavenly Father, which created this heart, unique to me, and that if it gives me trouble, I can talk to Him, and that was so I relied on my faith, which my parents taught me, and you know, those were three things that were very important.
Definitely the love, but just the open communication, which was a trial and error process with my family, but we've come to that. I know now, and I've known later on in life, like I can vent my fears and my anxieties to my parents, and as a child, you know, you can talk about what you're scared of, and they can, you know, relay and validate, and you know, validate your fears, validate your anxieties, all of that, but also to just, you know, have that communication open and make them, they made me proud. I work in the same clinic that I grew up going to, so I want to be able to make an impact with other heart kids. I didn't really know when I was a kid. So.
I think my parents did a good job of, like others have said, letting you do stuff without limitations, and not making a huge deal of it.
I would say having heart problems was never portrayed as a negative thing or never communicated to me that something is wrong with you. I understood that there were defects there, but it was something that this is something that can enhance your life and help you become better and be a better person for it, rather than something that is a detriment or a deficit to you in your life. And then the second thing is they, especially at a young age, made me feel special about it. You know, like my dad would always call me Miracle Man or different things like that. And, you know, as a little kid, it's one of those things that just kind of sticks. And it just, like, oh, you know, not a hero. I mean, you are a hero. But you take on that persona as a young child, and it becomes, this is something that I've been able to accomplish and as a positive thing as opposed to a negative thing.
For me, it was just great support from family, friends, grandparents, and I like the approach of my parents. Even when there was difficulties with procedures or illnesses or even life in general, there was always that element of humor, which for me alleviated a lot of anxiety. So,
Yeah, just feeling loved. I have felt loved by my parents and sisters and my whole life, and yeah, I think it's with my daughter, you know, you love all your children, but it is when you invest so much into one little kiddo, like with my Mia, like she just filled my days. I soaked her up. I loved every moment I had with that girl, and you know, every day is a struggle because I want her back desperately, but I don't regret any of the life that I had with her. I don't regret, you know, I tried to make her life normal. I tried to let her experience and do fun things, and I do regret taking her on the Make-A-Wish trip. But my advice would be just soak up your kids and just love them so much. That's all.
I think everybody nailed it in the last one. That just love and support. And you know, my parents were just kind of what I spoke of before. Was it's a matter of fact. You can't do anything to change it. Why not you? And what are you gonna do about it? That's always kind of been growing up. And if there was anything to be scared of or anxiety over, it was okay. Well, what can you do about it now? And what can you be in control of? So that was kind of what my parents did. So.
Thank you so much.